What is going on, everybody? It's your favorite guy, Demetrius Naylor, and we are live. I apologize about the delay, but we are live to you now. I'm just trying to get everything set up. Tonight, we have a special broadcast for you. I've got some good friends to come back on the show and talk with me and just go over some basic concepts, basic thought processes or processes. I don't know if I'm ever saying that right, but either way, we want to talk about the elephant in the room. We want to talk about what is happening on the world stage right now as it pertains to race relations, as it pertains to faith, and as it pertains to the attack on the church. I'm just going to flat out call it what it is. We're going to speak on it tonight with two very profound, very wise gentlemen. I'm going to bring them in now. First, I'm going to bring in Mr. Bill Schomburg. How are you, sir?
Great. Thank you, Demetrius. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. My pleasure. And then we're also going to bring back to the stage Mr. Pastor Maurice Irvin, that pastor who lives. How are you, sir?
What's going on, good sir? Glad to be here with you guys.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, it looks like my co-host, Michelle McLean, couldn't make it again tonight. So we're just going to go forward. The show must go on. But what I do want to talk about tonight is we want to talk about a few things. But if you gentlemen will real quick introduce yourselves to the audience so that way they know who you are, just in case they missed the show last time. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, before they get started, if you could take one tiny quick second, share this thing out. You never know what kind of conversation is going to be sparked off of the conversation that we have here tonight with these gentlemen, or any night. The little bit of wisdom that they impart into you could help you or somebody you know. So if you could take a half a second, like and share. And if you're on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Thank you. Whoever wants to go first.
Pastor, please.
Thank you, sir. My name is Maurice Irvin. I am campus pastor at Jacksonville, Catalyst Church in Jacksonville campus, and retired from the Marine Corps 2016. I've been full-time in ministry now for the past 4 years, and really excited to be here. Married with my lovely wife of almost 20 years. We'll be celebrating 20 years in January with two very adventurous teenagers. I have one son who is enlisted in the Air Force, and I have one daughter who just graduated from high school, and so there you have it. Life is getting ready to change.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I don't know what it looks like on everybody else's screen, but the one I'm looking at, I'm sitting between two former Marines. Once Marine, always Marine.
Yes, sir.
So, thank you both for your service. Yes, honored to be here. I'm a 63-year-old widower. My late wife passed with 19 years and several months of marriage, and met Demetrius through the automotive industry, the connection with the co-host Michelle McLean, and very blessed by that. It seems like we've known each other way longer than we have, actually.
It feels like
excited to share this time with the two of you, looking for that perspective around where faith intersects with our lives as individuals and community-wise. So excited for the conversation.
Yes, sir. We are excited too. So basically, we've got three varying perspectives. Me being a young, I guess we'll say a young middle-aged black man in America, 33 years of age. Mr. Bill, how old are you?
63.
Mr. Bill, 63-year-old Caucasian male in America. And Maurice?
44, be 45 next week.
Okay, we got some differing age groups here. So, and the reason I picked these two gentlemen is because they're very vast, different scopes on how life has come at them. But as you may find out, their opinions on faith aren't that different. So, first thing I'm going to ask is, and we'll do round robin. Basically, biggest thing we're talking about right now is the Black Lives Matter movement. Another thing that we're talking about right now is the fact that race is becoming, again, a very divisive, separating issue to the point where it's infiltrating the church. They're basically crucifying Jesus all over again based on the color of his skin. Now, with that being said, we'll start the first question with, what is your thought process on race relations right now as it stands in America from your point of view?
Wow. The the overriding or overarching piece for me is my broken heart. The aspect of my faith foundation is the idea that I'm called to love God as the first commandment, and the second commandment is to love others. And it doesn't say love others who look like me or act like me or come from where I come from. It says love others. And we have this really protected mindset here in America that, and I haven't traveled very much outside of the United States, but if you've traveled very much, you learn that what we have here in the United States, most people would trade without a question. They wouldn't even ask what the trade was.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, I could go. I don't want to monopolize this conversation, but here's a quote that comes to mind, or a short story. There was a pastor in the Northeast of a mega church, and when he had people visit him from foreign countries, when they got ready to leave, they would always say to him, "We'll pray for you." And he would always ask the question, we almost lack for nothing in this country. Why will you spend time praying for us? And their reply was, because you don't truly know what you have. And you also don't realize what you have is blinding you to what you need. So I just look at all of the aspects, and that's what brings me back to my broken heart. Just life should be so much different. But again, I have my own silos. The idea of I can't in any way, shape, or form imagine what either one of you has experienced in this life growing up in this country that has offered me so much. And even though I have my own trials, it seems like it's just so easy. So I'll stop there and would love to hear what Maurice what brings to this too.
After you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with Bill. I mean, I think that as it stands, I mean, honestly, if we go ahead and put it in just a perspective, it's simply sin. There's a sin nature that has risen up, that is not old. It's not new. It's old. It's just something that's just been prevalent in humanity as we know it. A sin sick condition, and it manifests itself in so many different ways. And one of the many heads of this dragon that we're wrestling with here is race, is one of those extensions, or race issues is an extension. And really what it boils down to, it just boils down to, I think, the plight of humanity, even from the beginning. I mean, if you go all the way back to Genesis, I think one of the things that I always thought about was why did Eve pursue such a plight, when she had all the instructions, she had everything that she needed, but at the same time, there's always this desire to elevate oneself above another, or to be better about something. And if you read in text, it's when Eve looked at the fruit of the tree, the first thing she said is, "Yes, it'll make one wise. It's good. It's good to the eyes." I mean, there's something about pursuing something that elevates us, or makes us better than the next person. But then when you get on down in the scripture, and you find out that it's very plain to see that the Bible teaches us that we should esteem others higher than ourselves, and to have that love unconditionally for each person, because we're all created in the likeness and the image of God. But it's a sin sick condition. I mean, I think if we just paraphrase it and we grind it down to its finest issue, it's just sin in this world.
For me, it's different. You know, man, I tell people all the time, I walk a very different line. I have mixed children, married to a white wife with, you know what I mean, adopted by white parents. I've lived that dichotomy of not black enough for the black folks, not white enough for the white folks, but at the same time, my preference is what my preference is. And I don't necessarily tout that to say, oh, you know what I mean? I want somebody to feel bad for me, or I'm stuck in a bad place. I'm in a great space in life. But what I will say is that I've always dealt with that kind of dichotomy of both sides of the table. Now, for me, I'm not foolish enough to say, like, when I was growing up as a kid, like my mother used to always say, my adoptive mother used to always say, I don't see color. And I think that's one of the biggest conceptions that everybody is getting wrapped around the axle on, or people are being vilified for, is the fact that, oh, I don't see color, or I don't know what color, I don't know color because I love everybody. I've always been stuck in that in between space. So I'll segue that into my next question. Where do we stand, or where do we go, or how do we address the folks that say all lives matter, but then you have the people that say Black lives matter, and until Black lives matter, all lives can't matter. You know what I mean? I'm not going to sugarcoat this conversation, gentlemen. I want everybody to have this very deep raw. And I know you got everybody's like, did he just say that? Yes, we're going to talk about the real Maurice. This show is going to talk about everything. But that is the biggest point of contention right now. Everybody's saying that all lives cannot matter until Black lives matter. What is the thought process from the heart? We'll start with Maurice this time.
Oh man, that's a loaded question, and it is. I think that let me be very clear about this. I think that if we go ahead and say, if everybody gets to the point where they say, Black Lives Matter, trust me, sin will find another way to manifest itself. And I think that's very important for us to understand that the thing about sin is it's a bottomless pit. It's a bucket with holes in the bottom of it that you can't feel. Yeah. And I think if we get the entire world to go ahead and say, yes, Black Lives Matter, then guess what? They'll find something else. Sin will find itself a way to manifest itself if you give room to sin. And I think that's why it's so important for us as a church, for us to take a very, very consistent stand biblically, because at the end of the day, I think that if the moment that you choose a side, that's the moment that you're going to be vilified. The moment that you go ahead and say, well, I'm for Black Lives Matter, or I'm from All Lives Matter, I think at the end of the day, I think that we need to stand. I heard it best said this way. It's like, how can you take a stance for Christ in a left and a right world? It's like, how do you find that balance, and how do you find that medium? And I think that when you walk the plumb line of the scripture, I think that it will definitely bring about a sense of balance in your life, and you will have an opportunity to really minister to all sides of this spectrum. But I think that at the end of the day, the choice is neither left nor right. My choice is Christ. My choice is not Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter. My choice has always been Christ. The scriptures encourage me to seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and everything else will be added. So my following is following the kingdom principle of exalting Christ, loving as Christ loved, giving as Christ gave, and to continue to encourage and love and inspire and motivate. And there's so many things that I can do that empowers all aspects of this, to where that I don't necessarily get myself caught up on choosing sides.
Well said.
Wow. That's incredibly well said, Maurice. So I have to admit, in my journey, I'm one of those people that use the phrase, I don't see color. And the flaw in that is what's being exposed. And so I had to accept the mindset, or the shift in my own mindset, the log in my own eye, if you will, of realizing, wow, this is something I need to learn. This is something I need to be better educated about. And I love the perspective that you offered, Maurice. It brings to mind a message that the pastor that most of my foundation is based on. He put a question up on the screen one day. This is 15 years ago. And he said, how many churches did Christ create? And so people are guessing in the congregation before the service starts. And when he when he flipped the screen, the answers, he created one church. He created his church. And everything else is created by man because of our sinful nature, our human nature, if you will. And the tough part, I certainly don't want to sit here and sound like I'm trying to tell anybody else what to believe. I am more than ready, given the opportunity to share my beliefs. But it was put into perspective one evening when I was talking to a family relative. The Lord said to me, Bill, they're not going to hear what you're saying because I haven't shown them what I have shown you. And it really struck me from the aspect of, I believe what I believe because of what he has shown me, the scales that he's removed from my eyes. And he calls individuals at different times for different reasons, but always for his purpose. Without sounding like I'm wandering too far off the topic, I love the book of Judges in the Bible because between Judges and Kings, over centuries, the Lord allowed multiple kings, some good, some not so good. And as Israel strayed further and further from God, he would then step in, bring the leader that he ordained for his purposes, put them back on the path, and yet over and over and over they strayed, and he brought them back to the path until he decided, look, we're going to do something different. So the things that we're experiencing today in life are just that. They're just life. Christ and God have not lost their way. They're using circumstances they're either allowed or created to draw people closer to him. I don't believe there's any other purpose in what's going on. It's to draw people who are willing to have eyes to see and ears to hear, to be brought closer to his purpose, for his purpose on earth. So sorry if I sound like a pastor. I don't mean to.
No. I mean, I love both perspectives. The reason why I brought you on here is so that way we could have the honest conversation. We could have that open perspective on what it means to each of you, because I think what is being lost in translation between the Black Lives Matter movement and the unrest, the civil unrest and the rioting and the looting is the fact that we are somehow missing God at the center of all of it. And I think that we are missing the love at the center of all of it. I don't like the few bad apples mantra, but at the same time, I don't cast blame or criticism against a whole group of people for one man's actions, if that makes any sense. So the next question I would say is, well, before we get
let me put this into the perspective too. I think it's very important for those who are listening, everyone to understand. I think that there's a huge differentiation between the Black Lives Matter movement as an organization and also the statement that Black Lives Matter. And I think that it's hard to draw that line and get people to understand, because I think that for the most part, the majority of the people who are actually advocating for Black Lives Matter are really advocating for the fact. And that goes without saying, the fact that, yes, Black Lives Matter. But I think that where it gets misconstrued is that most people don't necessarily ascribe to all of the tenets of the Black Lives organization. Yes. And that's where I think that is important for people, and it's important. And I actually solicit all of your listeners and followers to actually look into that organization and actually understand what that means, because that will actually bring a level of balance when I say things like I don't choose sides, because I can't necessarily ascribe to all that, as a man of God, I just can't, you know what I mean? And it's important for people to understand that those tenets, again, even with everything, I don't think everybody agrees with what Starbucks stands for, but at the same time, you're going to go and get a cup of coffee. I don't think everybody else appreciates everything that Wendy's or McDonald's or whatever, Walmart or whatever. But at the same time, you are a consumer, And so there's a understanding that has to be pursued as to, if I'm going to ascribe to an organization like Black Lives Matter, then I need to understand what that means and what that stands for. And then
Yeah.
also, if I'm going to say for the statement, and again, I don't think any of us here on this panel are saying that Black lives don't matter or all lives matter more than Black lives matter, because we're definitely not saying that. But what we're saying is that from a balanced perspective, it's important for us as believers to make sure that we're ready to be able to stand on the side of right and to stand against wrong. I don't care what organization it is. I don't care exactly what is it. There's right and there's wrong, and I think that that's important for us to be able to just rise up and say, hey, let's stand for what's right.
I one last quick point. I think you're dead on, just bullseye for that piece, and it highlights for me the personal responsibility, just like spending time in the Word so I know what the Bible actually says versus what someone else tells me or thinks it says, because sometimes there's drastic interpretation differences, even in translations. I'm studying a rabbi named Jason Sobel, who's he's the faith expert behind the series The Chosen, and some of the things that he brings to light are even new to what I understand. So that personal responsibility, each of us must be educated, not by what somebody else we think knows, but what we learn ourselves, what we have available to us. Thank you for bringing that out, Maurice.
Oh, I 100% agree. But before we continue, just a quick word. Hold on one second, gentlemen. We'll bring you right back. As always, we want to highlight who's on the show tonight. We want to say thank you to Michelle McLean. She could not be with us today because of storm difficulties in South Carolina. My wife is watching. We got Edward Cummins. We've got Anthony Santangelo. My guy, what's going on, sir? We've got, let's see, Paul Henry's in here, Alexander Perry, Renee Suarez. What is going on, everybody? We just want to say thank you. If you could take a second to share, like, and subscribe. What we are talking about tonight is race relations as it pertains to the church. We've got about 8 minutes left. We're not going to run over tonight because I do value your time. I never want to keep you for a long time. But as I bring the gentleman back into the screen, what I do want to go into and go over as we're closing up the last 8 minutes of the show is, you both touched on a very good point, and I feel like it needs to be talked about, is education. I think education, whether it be from the, like we just talked about, the All Lives Matter movement versus the Black Lives Matter movement versus just, you know what I mean, from a place of a God-centered perspective. What do you think would be the best way to educate and go about turning this around? And I know, and I said it in the past show that we've talked about in the past, I've said it before in my own personal lives, that this is something that took years. I'm talking about years and years and years of oppression and hate and discontent and discomfort on both sides. But how do you think we turn the tide, and how do you think we reverse this place where we became so race-centric in a matter of, what is this, a month and a half, 2 months? And I'm not saying that this is only pertaining to this issue, but I think Maurice said it best. This is the first time in a long time that people have had to sit down, and I don't know if we said this personally to each other or if we said this on the live, but somebody had to sit down and actually face the facts. This is the first time that somebody actually had to recognize, and I hope the feedback that I'm hearing is only on my screen, but and I apologize, ladies and gentlemen, if it isn't, but that this is the absolute first time that everybody, the stage was lit and the crowd was full because of the pandemic. And I can't but help say that I think God had a hand in that, because for the first time, you couldn't sweep it under the rug. You couldn't deny it. You couldn't say, oh, this was this, or it was that, or it was flat out basically a snuff film on live TV. And everybody had to pay attention to it. So how do we turn the tide? And we'll go out with that because we're at 26 minutes. How do we take this place that we're in and how do we turn it around? Is it education? Is it love? Is it God? Is it the hands and the feet of being the hands and the feet of the church, our mantra at Catalyst. I mean, what is it that helps us turn around? I'm gonna start with Bill, and then we'll end with Maurice, and then we'll close it out.
Wow, talk about a loaded question.
And they're not scripted questions. I just took these as you guys were talking. I apologize.
Oh, don't apologize. I love the candid nature, and that's the only reason that I would participate, is because I know we're not going to sugarcoat it. For me, it comes down to the idea. I'm back to personal responsibility. I have a responsibility as a follower of Christ to do my best in the things that he demonstrates for me, the places where he offers me authority, opportunities, whether it's to speak or to lead, and always that my actions must match my words. There's no excuse. I can't be a hypocrite. I've been an elder for 2 different seasons at a church, looked at leadership in all aspects, and I use all of the tenets he provides through my faith that he gives me the opportunity to practice in life. If that sounds like I'm dodging an answer, I don't have an answer that applies to everyone else, because God didn't offer me authority over anyone else. He might offer me influence, lessons to learn from others, so many lessons to learn, just like this conversation tonight. And if I had a message to offer to anyone else, it would be, start with the man in the mirror. Start with the person that you look at every day. It's not just men, it's women, our children. Our children are looking at us for examples, because if we don't provide one that they can look up to, they'll find their own people that they will follow, and it may not be the people that you might choose. So I hope that answers that, but it's not an easy solution, other than if you're not standing up for something, you'll fall for anything, and I'm going to stand for Christ.
Amen.
Maurice?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with everything Bill said, and I think that if I could take what he said and then add it on the beginning of what I'm going to say, we put both of them together. But yes, absolutely, starting with the person in the mirror. But I think the greatest way that we can as from a perspective as a pastor, from the position that the church sits in, I think that we have an opportunity as a church to really model what unity really looks like. There are a lot of things that we as a church, we get an opportunity to really shine the light of Christ on this situation. But again, I think that, just like anything else, judgment starts in the house of the Lord. And this is going to hit us first. And people are really going to be looking at, what is it that we're going to, like you say, what we're going to stand for. And I think that if we continue to be the light, we continue to be a breath of fresh air under the sails and wind under the sails of people who are out dry, destitute. They're wandering in dry and arid places, and they're doing their best to try to find some sense of light at the end of the tunnel or what have you. We got to be there. And I think that now, as the church, this is not a time for us to cower or us to pull back into the 4 walls of our churches and to get into our places of comfort. But this is an opportunity for us to be able to step out into the streets, to go out into the highways and the byways, and to compel men and women to come to Jesus just as they are. This is when the gospel message really needs to really be proclaimed on a very, very clear platform. Nothing about us changes. Our playbook don't change. That's what I love about being in the gospel work. Our playbook don't change. I don't care what the battle is. I don't care what the strategy is. We have always understood real clear that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, rulers, and darkness and wickedness in high places. My war is not against a white guy or a person of a different. My war is against the enemy, Satan, Lucifer. That's where my war is at. And when I realize that battle has already been won, and all I have to do is stand in the righteousness of Christ and stand in the power that's already been given to me, the authority that's already been given to me, I sit in my place in heavenly places with Christ Jesus, and I begin to bind and to loose and to pray and to proclaim and profess That's my role. My role is to just, if the tide is going to turn at any particular point at any time, I think that it's going to take those who are ready to hear to have an ear to hear, and I think that at the end of the day, those are asking for something. You got to know what you're asking for. At the end, we could protest, we could take the streets, and then we could do all these different things. But at the end of the day, after you have protested, then what are you asking for? And if you don't know what you're asking for, then how can we actually sit at the table and do what the Bible asks us to do, is to reason one with another and try to figure out a course of action, and to be able to figure out who you need to sit with, who you need to talk to, what policies and procedures need to be changed, and how we can actually bring about a future that we can all have confidence in.
Ooh.
Amen.
Yeah, well said. Gentlemen, thank you. I thank you for your words. I thank you for your wisdom. I thank you for your guidance, both as my personal friends. I thank you both. I appreciate you. I know the audience appreciates you. We're getting nothing but a bunch of love on the comments as I was reading while I was in the back room. We thank you for your time. I thank you for your family sharing you with us. Until the next time we meet, gentlemen, thank you. I'm going to put you guys in the green room if you hang out for just a second. Ladies and gentlemen, another awesome show here on The Journey, episode 4. We were talking about race relations. We were talking about how it is affected or to be in effect by a blood-bought believer such as myself, Bill Schomburg, and Pastor Maurice Irvin. Two vastly different lifestyles, but one common goal is to love you as Christ loved you. Guys, I appreciate your time, but before we go, I do have to say one thing. I got 3 winners for the Heavyweight Disciples and Nailed It giveaway that we were doing. We received some awesome comments, some awesome love. So our 3 winners for the shirts, obviously, we appreciate everybody reaching out and giving us our feedback. The shirts will be available. We are going to start shipping shirts July 15th of this month. The Nailed It shirts and the Heavyweight Disciple shirts. First, we got Heather Sheldrake. Heather Sheldrake is the winner of the first winner of the contest. We've got Pastor Adrian James. She is the second winner of the contest. And then on the very last one, hold on. I gotta get back to it. I wrote the last name down. I cannot remember off the top of my head. I apologize. And all you had to do was like and comment and or share. But Mr. Bill Schomburg. Congratulations. So you 3 folks will be receiving free shirts. The ones that you liked and commented on, you will be receiving 3 free one of the 3 shirts that you commented on of your choosing. I'll reach out to you for your sizes and for the pattern in which you would like. I appreciate each and every one of you, as always, for your support. It's your guy, Demetrius Naylor. We'll see you next week.